I want to show you something. This is Google Sheets with some user feedback data. This is an n8n workflow connected to that Google Sheet. And this is me connecting to n8n workflow from my LM Studio chat window, grabbing the Google Sheet data and have it available to me in my chat. Now imagine creating loads of these n8n workflows and being able to jump in and out seamlessly within a chat window. So you're seamlessly jumping in and out of each one of these workflows in your chat interface of choice. All of this would be running locally, completely under our control, all private, all custom. Let's see how you build this. So now here's our Google Sheet data. It's got a theme and the number of responses next to it. This is the stats tab, and the sheet is called Smoking Bones. So what we want to do is this. We've got this MCP server with Google Sheets, and we're going to connect to our MCP server from our LM Studio, and this is LM Studio. And we're going to do this by updating the MCP client config. So let's head on over to n8n and build this. Now we're in n8n, and what we're looking for is the MCP server trigger, which is this one. So now we've got this selected and can just leave the authentication as it is. If we were setting this live, then we want to set some authentication to it. But notice the test URL that we've got here, and we've also got production URL there as well. So just notice those for now. So outside of there, let's add the tool. The tool we want to add is Google Sheets. So these are all tools that specifically work with the MCP server. So search for Google Sheets. There it is. And then in the tool description, it's set to automatically. We'll come back to that in a second. For now, check out the resource. The resource is set to sheet within document. And then if we look at operation, we'll see that there's loads of other stuff that we can do, including delete stuff. Let's stick to get rows for now. Now for the document, I've got it set to my Smoking Bones document. I didn't want to show you the full list. And then for the sheet, just select the tab, the sheet tab. Now you can set these with AI. I have them set dynamically with AI, but I like to have these things locked down for each specific work. And I recommend you do the same. So now back up to this tool description. Now you can leave this to set automatically, but I like to set it manually. This way, you've got this Google Sheet with user feedback data in there. And so imagine you're accessing it from a chat window. So you want to have something in the description that matches what you might be searching for. So I'm going to replace this with get user feedback from rows in as rows from Google Sheets. So that matches it. So now we've got our workflow and we've got our tool connected. And if we go in back to the URL, so we've got the test URL there, and we can just execute the step, and this would set up a listener. So then we can access it via the test URL, or we can just make it active. And if you get this sort of notification, then ignore that for now. But what it's basically saying is you might need to set this SSE flag to true for some MCP tools, but you don't need to worry about this for now. So we've got it active now. If we head on over to the production URL and then copy that. So now let's head on over to LM Studio. So go to the chat window, and if you in the chat window, you'll notice that there's a plug icon. Click on that and then install and then edit MCP. And this is the MCP server that we set up earlier, but you might have nothing in there if you didn't follow the previous tutorial. Don't worry about that. What we want is to put in comma after this previous MCP server and then give it a name. We'll call ours MCP n8n Google Sheet. Yeah, that'll do. and we just need to put in the URL. And if we're in another tool, we may need to put in the SSE flag. We don't for LM Studio, so let's just save that. And then if we now activate that MCP server, we've got the Google Sheet server activated, and we can just prompt. So get user feedback stats from Google Sheets and give me some. And now we can see my Quen model thinking. It's going to ask me to proceed. And then if I expand this part, we'll see that this is the results that we're getting back from the Google Sheets. So I know for sure it's getting the data and it's now available for me to use. Now, it's worth summarizing what happened here. We added an MCP client using the URL for our n8n MCP trigger. And as it connects to it, all of these tools are now available. Now, if you go back, these tools that are defined here are equivalent to these tools in n8n. So if I add a new tool here, that tool will appear as a dropdown in LM Studio. The name of the tool matches the name of the tool in n8n. And this description, again, is really important because this is what the LM sees in order to decide whether or not to use a tool and how it needs to use a tool. Now, this is great. We're able to fetch data from Google Sheets, but this is a pretty static example. Let's create something more dynamic. Now, in my previous tutorial, I showed you how to connect to a semantic database, specifically Quadrant Vector Store. And what we did was we dumped a whole load of user feedback into the database. And the semantic nature of this database meant that we were able to do some searches based on similarity. So we're able to search, for instance, theme labels or other non-literal matches. So we could say, give me everything to do with the checkout. And then it would return all of the results related to checkout. Now, in order to do something like that within a chat session, we need to be able to send search queries as well as retrieve them. So how does something like that work? Well, let's take a look. So back in n8n, and this is the server we created previously. And we want to create a new tool, a quadrant search tool or a semantic search tool. Whether we create this semantic search tool as part of our previous server, this server, it's an architectural decision. And from that architectural perspective, I like to have servers with as few tools connected as possible. And the tools that are connected need to be for related tasks. So each server needs to have tools for related tasks. But at the same time, they should be distinct enough from each other as tools in order for the language model to know which tool to pick within a server. Because it's a mistake to have servers with too many tools connected, as it gives the language model too many choices to make. And that's not a good idea, because remember, these language models are dumb. And I'm not just talking about small models here. I'm just talking about all models in general. So having said that, I think having a Google Sheets stats tool and a semantic search tool are distinct enough to be part of the same server. But ideally, if I was creating this real, I would have these as the same server. But let's create a new server for now, just so we can practice this. And again, we've got our test URL and production URL, and then we're going to leave the authentication as blank again. So we're not going to touch those. And let's add the tool. And the tool we want to add is the Quadrant Vector Store tool, not the Quadrant tool that you see there, the Quadrant Vector Store. And I've got the connection already set up because I followed the previous tutorial, because you can't do any of this without data, without having a vector store set up before. And in operation mode, You've got loads of operations there, but I'm going to leave it as is. And then for the description, I want to say takes input as a query search, the vector store, and returns documents. So it's nice and descriptive. And then in the quadrant collection from the list, pick the vector store that I added earlier. So I'm going to point it to this OpenAI test collection. And then limit it to 4. That's the number of results that it comes back with. So I'm just going to leave it as that for now. And then save. And then we want to add an embedding model. So we've got the quadrant tool there, and we need to add the same model that we used to add the data into the vector store. So with that now added, let's just execute the step, and then we're able to search for a query. I'm going to search for Boney Mountain because I know there's some user feedback mentioning that. And yeah, there we go. We've got our results back. So we know that this search thingy works. Cool. So we've got the MCP server trigger, and we don't need to activate it because it's already active. And so we just need to head on over, rename it to something more reasonable so I know what the difference is between the previous ones. Then get the production URL, copy that, and then in the MCP config in LM Studio, add in the MCP server. So find the previous server, comma, and then in quotes, the name of this new server. So call it MCP-quadrant search, and then paste in the production URL. And now, if we add that MCP server tool and use a prompt that I prepared earlier, so this just says, fetch data from quadrant that matches Boney Mountain, so the search that we did previously to test it. And we'll see that it makes a call to our vector store and retrieves the relevant data, which is, so now not only do we have the Google Sheet data, we've also got data from our quadrant search, vector store search, available to use within our chat. Now, what we just did was just a proof of concept, because what I wanted to show you is how easy it is to create bespoke tools and workflows tailored to our unique requirements. So we can connect calendars, databases, any number of APIs to our n8n automations, and then have them available to us in natural language within our chat interface. This creates a sort of like a melting pot of tools that elevates our language models to make them much more capable and much more reliable. What's more, all of this is local, private, and ethical. So the question now is, what are you going to build?